You don't belong here. This restaurant serves a certain caliber of clientele. Marcus Reed, head server, designer light blue shirt pressed to perfection, diamond cufflinks catching the chandelier light, blocked Lena Martin at the entrance of the Laurentide. His finger pointed at her faded cardigan and simple skirt like they were evidence of a crime. You need a reservation. His voice rose, drawing eyes from every table. And our dress code is strictly enforced. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at... He paused, scanning her worn shoes, her empty hands. Somewhere more appropriate? There's a diner on 5th Street. Behind him, wealthy diners in the opulent dining room turned to watch the spectacle. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. A woman in Chanel whispered to her husband, "Sir, I'd just like a table." Security. Marcus snapped his fingers. 2 guards in black suits moved toward Lena. "This woman is trespassing. Escort her out before she disturbs our guests." Lena stood there, humiliated, surrounded, every eye in the restaurant judging her clothes, her skin, deciding she didn't belong. But 90 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up to the Laurentide's entrance. Owen Taylor stepped out. CEO of Taylor Hospitality Group. The man who owned this restaurant and 42 others. The woman Marcus just humiliated and threw out? That was Owen's wife. And she had walked in wearing her oldest clothes on purpose. Because Owen had sent her to test his staff. And they were failing spectacularly. 90 minutes earlier. Thursday, 4:47 p.m. Lena's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Owen's name flashed across the screen. Nursing 401 final exam, 8 a.m., late entry not permitted. Professor 37 minutes became the Laurentide reservation system, 6:45 p.m., walk-in test. No safety net. 2 hours. Lena stared at her closet. Designer dresses. Owen bought her hung in neat rows. Valentino, Dior. Clothes that announced wealth, status, belonging. Her hand moved past them. She pulled out the faded blue cardigan. The one from before Owen. Before the money. Before the last name that opened every door in this city. "You sure about this?" Owen stood in the doorway, holding printed emails. Anonymous complaints. 5 different customers, all people of color. All denied service at the Laurentide. Dress code violations. No reservation available, but the restaurant was half empty. Lena took the papers, read the pain in every line. The host looked at my son like he was dirt. They told us no tables, then seated a white couple in jeans 2 minutes later. I've never felt so small in my life. On Lena's dresser, a photo. 12-year-old Lena with her grandmother outside a department store in Atlanta. The day a security guard followed them through every aisle because Grandma's coat was old and their skin was black. "You belong anywhere you choose to belong, baby," Grandma had said that night. "Don't let nobody tell you different." "I'll go," Lena said quietly. "If they're really doing this, I need to know." She pulled on the cardigan. Simple skirt. Flats with scuffed toes. Removed her jewelry, her watch. Anything that screamed Taylor. Owen kissed her forehead. "Record everything. I'll be 10 minutes away." Thursday, 6:45 p.m. The Laurentide rose before her like a glass cathedral. Crystal chandeliers visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. Valets in burgundy jackets. A line of luxury cars. Lena walked past the Mercedes and BMWs. Her reflection in the polished doors showed exactly what she intended. A woman who didn't belong. The host stand gleamed. Black marble. Gold accents. A blonde hostess in a sleek black dress looked up. Her smile died the moment she saw Lena. "Good evening." Lena kept her voice steady. "Table for one, please?" The hostess's eyes traveled down. Cardigan, skirt, shoes, back up to Lena's face. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, but I see empty tables." "We're fully booked." The hostess's tone turned ice. "Reservations are required." Through the glass partition, Lena counted 14 empty tables. "Perhaps I could wait for—" "Is there a problem here?" Marcus Reed appeared. Light blue shirt, diamond cufflinks, authority radiating from every pressed seam. The hostess leaned close to him, whispered something. Lena caught the words, "No reservation," and "dress code." Marcus's expression hardened. He turned to Lena with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Ma'am, I'm Marcus Reed, head server. I'm afraid we can't accommodate you this evening. I'd just like—" "Our establishment maintains certain standards." His voice rose slightly. Heads turned at nearby tables. "Standards that ensure all our guests enjoy an appropriate dining experience." Lena felt it happening. The thing she'd felt 100 times before. The shrinking. The shame. The voice that whispered maybe you really don't belong. But this time, she had a phone in her pocket, documentation in her purse, and a husband who owned this building. "I'd like to see your written dress code policy," Lena said calmly, "and the reservation log for this evening." Marcus's smile vanished. "Security! Now!" Thursday, 4:30 p.m. Lena stood at her bedroom window watching November rain streak the glass. Below, the city spread out in a glittering maze of steel and money. 15 years ago, she'd lived in a studio apartment in the South End, with bars on the windows and a radiator that only worked on Tuesdays. She'd worked double shifts at a call center, eaten ramen for dinner, and told herself that poverty was temporary, that education would save her, that hard work meant something. Then she'd met Owen at a community fundraiser. He'd been different from the corporate types she'd imagined, kind, curious, genuinely interested when she talked about her master's thesis on urban poverty. 6 months later, he'd proposed. 2 years after that, his father retired, and Owen became CEO of Taylor Hospitality Group. The money came with the name, the houses, the cars, the invitations to galas where champagne cost more than her mother's monthly rent used to be. But it never came with belonging. Lena still felt it in her chest when she walked into expensive spaces, the tightening, the voice whispering that someone would notice she didn't fit, that her clothes were too cheap, her hair too natural, her blackness too visible. She'd learned to perform confidence, to wear Owen's last name like armor. But underneath, she was still that girl from the South End, convinced she was one wrong move away from being asked to leave. Owen's footsteps crossed the hallway. "Lena?" She turned. He stood in the doorway holding his laptop, his face drawn with something between anger and exhaustion. "I need you to read these." He set the laptop on the bed. 5 emails, all sent to Taylor Hospitality's complaint line over the past 6 months. All about the Laurentide. All from customers of color. The host looked at me like I'd crawled out of a dumpster, said there were no tables available. 2 minutes later, a white couple in jeans walked in and got seated immediately. I had a confirmed reservation. They made me wait 40 minutes while they prepared my table. White walk-ins were seated within 5 minutes. "Your staff followed my family through the restaurant like we were going to steal silverware. Lena's stomach twisted. Owen, the complaints are consistent. Same restaurant, same patterns. He ran a hand through his hair. HR investigated. Talked to management. Everyone swears they follow protocol, but something isn't right. He looked at her with the expression she'd learned meant he'd already made a decision, but needed her permission. I need someone they won't recognize. Someone who can walk in and see what really happens when the customer doesn't look like they belong. His voice softened. I need you. Lena's throat tightened. You want me to? Dress down, no jewelry, no reservation. See if they treat you differently. He caught her hand. I know what I'm asking. I know it means putting yourself through. She knew what he couldn't say. Through the thing you've spent your whole life trying to escape. But those emails, those families, that pain she recognized in every word, because she'd lived it. When? Lena asked it quietly. Tonight, dinner service. I'll be 10 minutes away. She nodded, already moving toward her closet, already choosing which version of herself to resurrect. Thursday, 6:45 p.m. The Laurentide rose from the corner of 5th and Lexington like a monument to excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed an interior bathed in golden light. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths so crisp they looked sharp enough to cut, and servers moving like synchronized dancers in black and white. Lena stood across the street for a moment, her faded blue cardigan suddenly feeling thinner in the November wind. Owen's Mercedes idled 2 blocks away. She could still call him, tell him this was a mistake. Instead, she crossed the street. The valets noticed her immediately. Their eyes tracked her approach. The worn cardigan, the simple black skirt, the flats with scuffed toes. One nudged the other. Neither moved to open the door. Lena opened it herself. The warmth hit first. Then the music, something classical and expensive. Then the smell of seared duck and truffle oil and money. The host stand gleamed black marble and gold, positioned like a checkpoint between the entrance and the dining room beyond. Through the glass partition, Lena counted the tables. 70% full. Every face she could see was white. Diamonds glittered at throats. Rolex watches caught the light. A man in a cashmere sweater laughed too loudly at his own joke. His date wore a dress that probably cost more than Lena's first car. The hostess looked up from her reservation screen. Blonde. Early 20s. Sleek black dress that probably came with the job. Her smile was automatic, professional, practiced. Until her eyes registered what stood before her. The smile froze, cracked, disappeared. Good evening. Lena kept her voice steady, pleasant. Table for 1, please. The hostess's gaze traveled downward in a slow, deliberate assessment. Cardigan, skirt, shoes. Back up to Lena's face, where her expression had transformed into something between confusion and distaste. Do you have a reservation? No, but I see you have availability. We're fully booked tonight. The words came quick and clipped. Reservations are required for dinner service. Lena glanced past her. Through the glass, she counted 14 empty tables. A server walked past carrying menus toward a couple who'd just entered behind her. White, late 50s, the man in khakis and a polo shirt. I don't mind waiting if... Is there a problem here? The voice came from behind the hostess. A man emerged from the dining room, tall, white, mid-40s, wearing a designer light blue shirt so perfectly pressed it looked like it had never been worn. Diamond cufflinks flashed as he rested one hand on the host stand. His name tag read, Marcus Reed, head server in elegant script. The hostess leaned toward him, whispering something Lena couldn't hear, but she caught the words, no reservation and dress code, and saw Marcus's eyes flick to her cardigan. His professional smile appeared, but it was different from the hostess's, colder, sharper, the kind of smile that was really a warning. Good evening, ma'am. His tone was courteous and condescending in equal measure. I'm Marcus Reed. I'm afraid we can't accommodate walk-ins this evening. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at— He paused, his eyes completing another slow scan of her appearance. One of our more casual establishments? Lena felt it then. The thing she'd been expecting. The thing she'd dressed for. The judgment. The dismissal. The unspoken message written in his expression. You don't belong here. Marcus shifted his position slightly, placing himself between Lena and the dining room entrance. A human barrier dressed in designer fabric and authority. Our dress code is strictly enforced. His voice carried just enough volume that nearby diners turned their heads. We maintain certain standards to ensure an appropriate atmosphere for all our guests. Lena felt heat rise in her chest, but kept her expression neutral. I'd like to see your written dress code policy, please. Marcus's jaw tightened. It's available on our website. Then you can print it for me here. She kept her tone even, reasonable. I'd like to know specifically which items I'm wearing violate your standards. Behind Marcus, the couple in khakis and polo shirt were being led to a table by the window. The man wasn't even wearing a jacket. The hostess handed them menus with a warm smile. Marcus noticed where Lena was looking. His expression hardened. Ma'am, as I explained, we're fully booked. His voice rose another degree, projecting now. Heads turned at 3 nearby tables. Without a reservation, I cannot seat you. And even with a reservation, our dress code— Those people just walked in. Lena gestured toward the couple now settling into their seats. They didn't have a reservation. They're members of our preferred guest program. Then I'd like to apply— The application process takes 6 to 8 weeks. Marcus's smile had vanished entirely. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting our dinner service. Lena stood perfectly still. Around her, the restaurant had gone quiet, in that particular way that meant everyone was listening while pretending not to. A woman in a black cocktail dress whispered to her companion. A server paused mid-stride, uncertain. At a corner table, an older gentleman frowned into his wine glass, uncomfortable but silent. I'm not disrupting anything. Lena's voice remained calm. I'm simply requesting service. Marcus pulled a radio from his belt. Security to the host stand, immediately. The words landed like a slap. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. The familiar, ancient hurt of being treated like a threat. Like an intruder. Like someone whose presence was inherently wrong. She'd felt it at 12 when a store clerk followed her through aisles. At 16 when a teacher assumed she'd cheated on an exam. At 23 when a cab drove past her waving hand to pick up a white woman half a block away. She'd thought marrying Owen would end it. That money and status would be armor enough. But here it was again. Different restaurant. Same message. You don't belong. 2 security guards emerged from a side hallway. Both white, both built like linebackers, both wearing expressions of practiced intimidation. They flanked Marcus, forming a wall of authority. This woman is trespassing. Marcus gestured at Lena like she was evidence in a crime scene. Please escort her from the premises. One guard reached for Lena's arm. Don't touch me. She stepped back, her voice sharp for the first time. I'm leaving. but her hand moved to her purse, found her phone, pressed record. "For the record," Lena said clearly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest, "I'm being denied service at the Laurentide restaurant. The time is 6:52 p.m. on Thursday, November 14th. I requested a table. I was told there were no reservations available, despite empty tables and walk-ins being seated. I asked to see the written dress code policy. Instead, security was called." Marcus's face flushed red. "You need to leave. Now." Lena looked at him, at the hostess, at the security guards, at the diners watching with their champagne and their silence. She memorized every face. Then she turned and walked out. The cold air hit Lena's face the moment she stepped outside. But she didn't stop recording. She stood on the sidewalk, phone raised, capturing the restaurant's gleaming facade, the valet station, the luxury cars lined up like trophies. "I'm standing outside the Laurentide at 6:54 p.m. Her voice was steady, clinical. "I was denied entry and threatened with arrest for requesting service." She lowered the phone, stopped recording, and immediately texted Owen. It happened. Exactly like the complaints. Worse. Her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was draining, leaving behind the raw wound of humiliation. She could still feel every eye in that restaurant on her, could still hear Marcus's voice projecting her unworthiness for everyone to witness. Through the window, she could see Marcus at the host stand, speaking animatedly to the hostess and security guards. He was gesturing, explaining, justifying, building his narrative of the disruptive woman who didn't belong, who'd tried to force her way into a space above her station. He believed his own story. Lena could see it in his posture, the confidence of someone certain he'd done the right thing, protected the restaurant's reputation, maintained standards. But then Lena noticed something else. A young server, Latina, maybe 22, petite in the standard black and white uniform, stood near the kitchen entrance watching the conversation. Her face was troubled, her eyes darting between Marcus and the spot where Lena had stood moments before. She twisted her hands together, took a half step forward, then stopped. Her mouth opened as if to speak, then closed. The server, her name tag read Sophia, looked toward the dining room where the couple in casual clothes sat laughing over their menus, then back to Marcus. Her expression shifted into something like recognition, or maybe horror. Sophia knew. Whatever Marcus had just done, whatever lie he was telling himself about dress codes and standards and maintaining excellence, Sophia knew the truth. Lena raised her phone again, zoomed in, captured Sophia's face through the window, that moment of uncomfortable knowledge. Then she panned to Marcus, still talking, still confident. Then to the couple in khakis being served champagne. Documentation, evidence, the building blocks of accountability. Her phone buzzed. "Owen, on my way, 10 minutes. Don't go anywhere." Another text immediately after. "Did you get it on video?" Lena, "Every second." She looked back through the window. Marcus had dismissed the security guards and returned to his position of authority at the host stand. The restaurant had resumed its normal rhythm, forks clinking against china, wine being poured, laughter rising from corner tables. The disruption had been removed, order restored. Sophia was still standing by the kitchen entrance, watching. Lena met her eyes through the glass. The young server's face crumpled slightly. Guilt, sympathy, fear all mixing together. She looked like she wanted to run outside, to apologize, to explain. But she didn't move, couldn't move, not without risking whatever Marcus might do to her. Lena understood. She'd been that girl once, the one who stayed silent because speaking up meant losing everything. She raised her phone one more time, sent Owen the videos with a single message. "We have them." Marcus glanced toward the window, saw Lena still standing there, and his expression flickered just for a second, with something that might have been uncertainty. Then headlights swept across the street. Owen's Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Owen stepped out of the Mercedes, wearing the expression Lena recognized from board meetings: calm, controlled, and absolutely lethal. He crossed the sidewalk in 4 strides, his Armani overcoat billowing slightly in the wind. "Show me." Lena handed him her phone. He watched the videos in silence, his jaw tightening with each second. When Marcus's voice came through the speaker, "You're disrupting our dinner service," Owen's eyes went cold. "Let's go." They walked through the Laurentides' entrance together. The same valet who'd ignored Lena 40 minutes earlier rushed to open the door, recognizing Owen immediately. "Mr. Taylor, good evening." "Sir." Owen didn't acknowledge him. Marcus was at the host stand, reviewing reservation logs with the blonde hostess. He looked up at the sound of the door, began his professional greeting. "Good evening. Welcome to—" and stopped dead. The color drained from his face in stages. Recognition. Confusion. Then dawning horror as his eyes moved from Owen to Lena and back again. "Mr. Taylor." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. We weren't expecting—" "Marcus Reed." Owen's voice carried through the restaurant like a blade. Conversations stopped. Servers froze mid-stride. "Head server, 5 years with the Laurentide. Excellent performance reviews. Employee of the quarter twice." Marcus nodded, uncertain where this was going, hope flickering across his features. "This is my wife." Owen gestured to Lena. "Lena Martin Taylor. You met her approximately 40 minutes ago." The blood rushed back to Marcus's face, flooding it red. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. She didn't. There was no—" He looked at Lena, really looked at her for the first time, seeing past the cardigan to the woman wearing it. "I didn't know." "No." Owen stepped closer. "You didn't know who she was, but you knew exactly what you were doing." Lena moved to stand beside her husband. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it filled the entire space. "My name is Lena Martin Taylor. I requested a table at 6:45 p.m. I was told you were fully booked, despite 14 empty tables. I was told I violated the dress code, though I observed multiple guests in casual attire being seated. When I asked to see your written policies, you called security and had me removed." She pulled out her phone, held it up. "I have video documentation of the entire interaction, time-stamped, with audio." Marcus's face had gone gray. Behind him, the hostess looked like she might be sick. Sophia, the young server, had emerged from the kitchen and stood frozen near the bar, her hand pressed to her mouth. "Mr. Taylor, I can explain." "Explain?" Owen's voice was ice. "Explain how you denied service to my wife because of how she was dressed. Explain the couple in khakis you seated without question 2 minutes later. Explain why you told her this was about reservations when they clearly weren't required for everyone." The restaurant was completely silent now. Every diner, every server, every busboy stood watching the scene unfold. Marcus tried one more time. "I was maintaining the restaurant's standards." "Our reputation depends on—" "Your reputation?" Lena's voice cut through his excuse. "Tell me, Marcus, whose reputation were you protecting when you looked at my skin and my clothes and decided I didn't belong?" Marcus had no answer. The silence stretched out. Damning. Two corporate attorneys arrived 20 minutes later, followed by Janet Kerr from HR, her expression grim and professional. Owen had made 3 phone calls from the host stand, each one brief, each one ending with the same instruction. Now. Clear the restaurant. Owen's voice was calm but absolute. Comp every table. Apologize for the inconvenience. Tell them we have an emergency health and safety inspection. The general manager, David Chen, appeared from his office, his face pale. Mr. Taylor, what's going on? I don't understand. You will. Owen turned to Janet. I want security footage from tonight, and I want every piece of footage from the past 6 months showing the host stand and entrance area. Sir, that's going to take, I don't care how long it takes, pull it now. And I want reservation logs, walk-in records, and every customer complaint filed in the past year. By 8:15 p.m., the Laurentide was empty except for staff. Servers stood in clusters, whispering, shooting nervous glances at Marcus, who sat alone at a corner table, his diamond cufflinks no longer catching the light, but seeming to weigh down his wrists. The security footage appeared on a laptop in the manager's office. Owen, Lena, Janet, and the attorneys watched in silence as the evening replayed. Lena approaching the host stand, the hostess's expression changing, Marcus materializing, blocking her path. The couple in khakis walking in and being seated immediately, security being called, Lena leaving. Go back. Owen's voice was tight. Show me the past 2 weeks, same time frame, 600 to 800 p.m. The footage rolled, day after day of dinner service. The patterns emerged like a photograph developing in chemicals. White families in jeans and sneakers being welcomed warmly. A black couple in business attire being told there were no tables. An Asian family with a confirmed reservation being made to wait 30 minutes, while empty tables sat untouched. A Latino man in a suit being asked for ID to verify his reservation. And in every incident, Marcus was there, watching, directing, enforcing standards that shifted like shadows depending on who was standing at the door. Jesus Christ! David Chen's voice was barely a whisper. He'd been watching over Owen's shoulder. I didn't know. I swear to God. I didn't. You didn't ask. Owen didn't turn around. How many complaints did you receive? Maybe 5 or 6 over the past year, but Marcus always explained them. Dress code violations, reservation errors, difficult customers. Difficult customers. Lena's voice was cold. Is that what you called them? Janet had been reviewing reservation logs on her tablet. Mr. Taylor, I'm seeing a pattern in the notes. Multiple entries marked discretionary seating required or manager approval needed. All of them. She paused, looked up. All of them are names that could be identified as non-white. Owen stood. Interview the staff, separately. Start with the servers who've been here longest. The interviews began at 8:45 p.m. in the private dining room. One by one, servers and hosts were called in. Most were nervous, evasive, clearly terrified of saying the wrong thing. A few claimed they'd never noticed anything unusual. One older server admitted he'd been told to be careful about certain situations, but didn't elaborate. Then Sophia walked in, the young server who'd watched from the kitchen entrance. She sat across from Janet, hands trembling, eyes already wet. Tell me what you know. Janet's voice was gentle but firm. Sophia's composure cracked immediately. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I seated them. A black family. 3 months ago. They had a reservation. The data analysts arrived Friday morning with laptops and external hard drives. Owen had called in the team that usually audited acquisitions, forensic specialists who knew how to find patterns in numbers that told stories management didn't want told. By Friday afternoon, the conference room walls were covered in spreadsheets and timeline charts. 67. The lead analyst, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, tapped her screen. 67 documented denials of service to customers of color over the past 5 years, all of them citing either dress code violations or reservation unavailability. She pulled up a comparison chart. During that same period, security footage shows at least 43 white patrons in jeans, sneakers, hoodies, and casual wear being seated without question. No dress code mentioned. No reservation required. Lena stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the city below. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face, heard his voice announcing her unworthiness to a room full of strangers. "Show me the complaints." Owen's voice was rough from too much coffee and too little rest. Sarah pulled up another file. 15 formal complaints filed with corporate over 5 years, all describing similar experiences, being told no tables were available, being questioned about reservations, being scrutinized about attire while watching white customers receive immediate service. Every complaint was forwarded to David Chen for investigation. And, Janet looked up from her notes, Chen forwarded them to Marcus Reed for response. Marcus responded to each one claiming the customers were confused about reservation policies, mistaken about dress code requirements, or, and I'm quoting here, difficult individuals looking for special treatment. Chen accepted those explanations. Owen's words were flat, stating fact rather than asking questions. Every single time, never escalated, never investigated independently, never pulled footage or cross-referenced with other complaints. Sarah's expression was carefully neutral, but her disgust leaked through. Chen documented that he trusted his head server's professional judgment. Saturday brought the email records. It had recovered 5 years of Marcus's work correspondence, including messages he'd thought were deleted. The first one was from 3 years ago. Subject line, Coaching Opportunity. David Chen to Marcus Reed. Marcus, I've received another complaint about a customer being turned away last Thursday. The customer claims she had a reservation and was told we were fully booked, but she could see empty tables. I need you to be more careful about how we enforce policies. Remember, we're here to serve all guests with excellence. Marcus's response, understood. We'll be more discreet. Not, I'll investigate what happened. Not, I'll review our procedures. Just more discreet. The second email was from 18 months ago. Another complaint. Another gentle warning from Chen. Marcus's response was almost identical. He wasn't telling Marcus to stop. Lena's voice came from the window, quiet and bitter. He was telling him not to get caught. Janet pulled up Marcus's internal messages to other staff. The language was coded but clear once you knew what to look for. Use discretion with this reservation. Make sure we have appropriate seating available. Guest at the door. Apply full dress code standards. Walk-in party of 4. Your judgment on accommodation. And then there were the messages that weren't coded at all. That family looked like they wandered in from a homeless shelter. Next time, check with me first before seating. We're not a community cafeteria. Standards matter. He trained them. Sophia had been called back in to review the messages. Her hands shook as she scrolled through them on the laptop. That's what all this means. When he said use discretion or apply full standards, We all knew. He meant watch them closer, make it harder, find a reason to say no. She looked up at Owen, tears streaming again. I didn't want to. I hated it. But I'm 22. This is my first real job. When I seated that family, the ones I told you about, Marcus pulled me aside after and said I'd shown poor judgment and failed to maintain establishment standards. Monday morning, 9:00 a.m. The boardroom at Taylor Hospitality Group headquarters occupied the entire 42nd floor, with windows overlooking the city like a judgment seat. 12 board members sat around the mahogany table, old money, new money, institutional investors, and Owen's Uncle Gerald, who'd helped build the company from 3 restaurants to 43. Marcus Reed sat alone on one side of the table, still wearing his designer shirt, but looking smaller somehow, diminished. His attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in navy, sat beside him, taking notes. David Chen sat on the opposite side, his career visibly ending in real time. Owen stood at the head of the table. Lena sat to his right, her hands folded, her spine straight. Let's be clear about what we're here to discuss. Owen's voice was boardroom cold. Systematic discrimination. A 5-year pattern of denying service to customers of color at our flagship property. 67 documented incidents, 15 complaints ignored, and a head server who trained his staff to enforce selective standards based on race. Marcus's attorney leaned forward. My client maintains he was enforcing legitimate dress code and reservation policies designed to maintain the Laurentides' luxury reputation. By applying them exclusively to people of color? Janet interrupted, sliding a bound report across the table. Security footage analysis. 43 white patrons in casual attire seated without question during the same period your client was turning away customers of color in business suits. Marcus finally spoke, his voice tight with desperation. I was doing my job, maintaining standards. I had no way of knowing, he gestured at Lena. This was entrapment. She came in deliberately dressed to look like what? Lena's voice cut through the room like ice. Marcus stopped, swallowed. Inappropriate for our establishment. A cardigan and skirt. Lena stood slowly. That's what you found inappropriate. A cardigan and skirt on a black woman. While men in polo shirts and khakis, white men, walked past me and were seated immediately. She walked to the window, her reflection sharp against the glass. I've been removed from stores I was shopping in because security assumed I was stealing. I've had teachers accuse me of cheating because my test scores were surprisingly high. I've had cab drivers refuse to stop. I've had restaurant hosts tell me they're fully booked while seating the white family behind me. Her voice remained steady, but the weight of a lifetime pressed into every word. I thought marrying Owen would change that money and status would be armor enough. But Thursday night, I stood in a restaurant my husband owns, wearing clothes that made me look poor, and I was treated exactly the way I've been treated my entire life. Like I didn't belong. Like my presence was an insult to everyone around me. She turned back to face the table. The difference is, this time I had documentation. This time I had power. This time I could demand accountability. Her eyes moved to Marcus. But how many people didn't have my last name? How many just left, believing they really didn't belong? How many went home and told their children that some places will never accept us, no matter what we achieve? The silence in the room was absolute. One of the board members, Patricia Winters from the pension fund, cleared her throat. The liability exposure alone. I don't care about liability. Owen's voice was sharp. I care that we've been running a flagship restaurant that's been systematically humiliating people for 5 years while we collected their money at 42 other properties. I care that every complaint was dismissed. I care that we trained staff to discriminate and called it maintaining standards. He placed both hands on the table. Here's what's going to happen. We implement comprehensive reforms across every property: mandatory bias training, mystery shopper audits, zero-tolerance policies. We restructure management at the Laurentide completely. We issue a public statement acknowledging what happened and what we're doing to fix it. Or, he paused, I resign, and I shut down the Laurentide permanently. Those are the options. Gerald Taylor spoke for the first time. That's not a small ask, Owen. The cost of doing nothing is higher. Lena's voice was quiet, but unmovable. I won't let this be buried in corporate settlements and confidentiality agreements. Either we fix this publicly, systemically, permanently, or I tell this story everywhere. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every hospitality conference. She looked at Marcus. You're terminated, effective immediately. For cause, no severance, no references. Marcus's face crumpled. You're destroying my career. You destroyed it yourself. Owen's tone left no room for argument. Every time you looked at someone's skin and decided they didn't deserve service. Every time you coached your staff to discriminate. Every time you hid behind standards while enforcing racism. The board voted 15 minutes later. Unanimous. Marcus Reed was escorted from the building by 10:30 a.m. The Dignity Service Protocol rolled out across all 43 Taylor Hospitality properties over the next 4 months. Every employee, from dishwashers to general managers, completed 40 hours of implicit bias training. Mystery shoppers of diverse backgrounds conducted quarterly audits, their reports going directly to corporate oversight, bypassing local management entirely. A zero-tolerance policy meant a single confirmed incident of discriminatory service resulted in immediate termination. The Laurentide remained closed for 6 months. Complete restructuring. New general manager, Maria Gonzalez, who'd worked her way up from server to regional director and had filed 2 of the original complaints that David Chen ignored. New host staff. New training protocols. The dining room was redesigned to eliminate the fortress-like host stand, replacing it with a welcoming open entrance. Owen and Lena funded the transformation personally. $20 million into the Inclusive Hospitality Initiative, a foundation offering scholarships to hospitality students from marginalized communities, bias training programs for industry professionals, and legal support for workers who faced retaliation for reporting discrimination. Lena became the foundation's public face. She spoke at the National Restaurant Association conference in Chicago, her voice steady as she described being removed from her husband's restaurant. She testified before state legislators in 3 states, pushing for stronger public accommodation protections. She met with hospitality workers who'd experienced similar treatment, listening to their stories, documenting patterns, building evidence for systemic change. By month 5, 17 other luxury restaurant groups had adopted modified versions of the Dignity Service Protocol. By month 8, 3 states had introduced new legislation strengthening anti-discrimination enforcement in public accommodations. Marcus Reed's name became shorthand in industry circles for everything the hospitality sector needed to leave behind. The Laurentide reopened on a Thursday evening in May. Lena had insisted on Thursday, the same day of the week she'd been turned away. But this reopening wasn't for critics or influencers or the usual opening night crowd. Lena had sent personal invitations to 67 families. The ones from the data. The ones who had been turned away, told they didn't belong, sent home, carrying the weight of rejection. They came dressed however they wanted. Jeans and hoodies, business suits, traditional dress from a dozen different cultures, cardigans and simple skirts. Maria Gonzalez greeted each family personally at the entrance. No barriers, no judgment, just warmth. Welcome to the Laurentide. We're honored to serve you. Sophia, the young server who'd broken down during the investigation, worked the dining room with a confidence she'd never had under Marcus. She stopped at a table where a black woman in her 60s sat with her adult children. "Miss Patterson," Sophia's voice was soft. "I was working the night you came in 2 years ago. I watched them turn you away. I didn't say anything. I'm so sorry." The woman took Sophia's hand. "You were scared. I understand. But you spoke up when it mattered." Lena moved through the dining room, stopping at each table, listening to stories she'd lived 100 variations of herself. A man who'd been told his reservation was lost. A family questioned about their ability to pay. A woman followed to the bathroom by security. Near the end of the evening, a young mother approached Lena, holding her daughter's hand. The little girl couldn't have been more than 7. "I brought her tonight because I wanted her to see this." The mother's voice wavered. "I wanted her to know that when someone treats you like you don't belong, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to stay silent." She squeezed Lena's hand. "You didn't just open a door for yourself. You opened it for all of us." Lena looked around the transformed restaurant, at the families laughing over their meals, at Sophia serving with pride instead of fear, at the diverse staff moving through the space with dignity, at Owen watching from across the room with quiet support in his eyes. She'd walked through that door 6 months ago expecting rejection, armored with documentation and her husband's name, prepared to expose injustice. She'd walked out transformed, no longer the woman who stayed silent, but the one who refused to let anyone else carry that silence alone.